This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
Hi, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. Are you looking for a beach read this summer? May I suggest your big wireless bill? It's got suspense, mystery, a slightly flat, emotional arc, and a shocking twist where you realize you've been overpaying the entire time. Fortunately, though, Mint's story is better. Every plan, $15 a month, even unlimited. That's it. Happy ending, zero tears. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
It's round 2 of the Nations Championship, and our Scottish cousins have come to visit. Let's get stuck in. Good evening and welcome back to Bit of an Animal, the South African Rugby Union podcast here on the Global Gainline YouTube channel. And it's not just Bit of an Animal, it's a crossover pod. It's our third crossover pod, but the first one with the Scottish rugby realm. And I have our friend and colleague Ethan, as you regular listeners and viewers would know from the URC Rewind / Champions Cup Rewind / Rugby Nations Cup Rewind. Ethan, it's the first time you're on the more South African pod. Tell our viewers about yourself.
Oh, hi guys. I'm very happy to be here, as now and then I will listen to the pod, especially if Glasgow or Edinburgh's playing a South African team in the URC, just for a different perspective. And I do quite like the intro music. It's quite good. So I've been a part of the Global Gainline since last November. You may have seen me making my debut in the Champions Cup section. But no, I'm quite a massive Scotland fan, and particularly my personal team is Glasgow Warriors. That my family, or my mum's side of my family, they're completely rugby mad. But I myself, unfortunately, gave up playing rugby when I was about 8, and I do regret not continuing because I couldn't be arsed when I was 8 years old. But yeah, gotten back into it, watching it and stuff when I got older, and it's led me here.
Awesome. Great to have you on. So with these preview pods, which are, by the way, sponsored by Culture Lab Kombucha, I've got a nice confetti boss flavor here. It's another sort of bukum, sort of like bushy fynbos type that you would find in the Karoo, turned into a kombucha, non-alcoholic fermented drink. Shout out to Culture Lab Kombucha. Shout out to Jason, the master brewer there, who was kind enough to give me a tour. So in the series of preview pods sponsored by them, we had Jacob Bashford representing England, who will be on the Global Gainlines more regularly beginning of next club season, because he'll be on the Prem pod as much as he can be. We've got Ethan this week, and then next week we've got a nice surprise with Hattie, Welsh or Cymru correspondent, and somebody everybody would be very familiar with for the Women's Rugby Treehouse here on the Global Gainlines. Check that out with Julia and I forget the other presenter's name, and sometimes even Lisa B from the Bit of an Animal podcast. That's a particular proud point for me because like sort of very instrumental in recruiting Lisa B, and I'm really stoked at the insight. So so we got Hattie as well. So we start with vibes, Ethan, just vibes. Before we get to the match 23, what are the vibes going into this game? South Africa versus Scotland, Loftus Versfeld, 20-6 South African time.
Yeah, I feel from a Scotland perspective, it's probably our best opportunity in a while. That's in that obviously Scotland had a bit of a mixed bag this year so far, a very horrible autumn last year, sort of mixed Six Nations period that did end a bit flat, but there was a bit of hype there. And then after the Argentina game, everyone's feeling a bit more, not quite confident, but a bit more optimistic, and hoping that we might have a better performance because the last few games against South Africa has unfortunately it's not been great from a Scotland perspective. That sure the margins weren't horrific, but it's more the idea that in both those games in 2024, which I was there at Murrayfield for, and the World Cup pool stage game, that Scotland didn't score anything, or they didn't score any tries, I should say. Because it was all just penalties. That with how Scotland's attacks been this year so far, that well, for example, how we beat France or put about 40 odd points on France, and then how we kind of carved up Argentina last week. It's a bit more slightly optimistic, but it's this idea that going against the world champions in their own backyard is something we've not had the opportunity to do in a very long time. So it's a nice way to also see how far we really are when compared to the best at the moment.
Yeah. From our perspective, I think personally, as you saw on the rewind on Sunday night, I was very cautiously optimistic. We did not have the match 23s at that point on Sunday night. We're recording now on Friday night because Gregor Townsend decided to cut our legs off and announce on Thursday. And unfortunately, myself and Ethan suffer from a condition Police Commissioner Ben would refer to as having a social life, so we couldn't record on Thursday evening. But actually, we had to go watch some stand-up comedy last night, which was a lot of fun. Um, so we would have so we're recording on Friday night, which is the game's tomorrow in less than 24 hours. So please share this podcast with your friends and family because it's a very short window of time. Watch it after the fact if you need be. But having seen the match 23s now as well, I continue to be cautiously optimistic because the thing is that every opponent, I think I have the same attitude as the players themselves. And because there's such a massive rotation within the South African setup, I think it negates complacency. Um, because if you put in a bad performance, they could change up the game plan, you could be left out. And that's a thing that I appreciate because I want us to win every game, and if we lose, we just take the lessons from it. And leading up to a World Cup, I'm fine with us losing games here and there, but we don't set out to lose games. We set out to do the best we can, and there's massive rotation. We'll get to the match 23s later. So the way I was feeling earlier, like 5 days ago, and now 5 days later, is very much the same. Don't underestimate this Scottish team. There's a lot of permutations. The Scottish team gets to go up against Andre Pollard, who sort of like was in the Bulls. A lot of Bulls players who were instrumental in defeating them, defeating Glasgow in the URC semi-final. A lot of these Glasgow players actually won a URC at Loftus more recently. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the game. It was weirdly didn't get much resistance from England last week. I think it's going to be way different for Scotland. And yes, people might point out that Scotland don't have the depth in terms of maybe props on the bench. It's less so. We don't know that much about your locks and stuff like that. So just because, but your loose forwards are really good. And I believe you are going to a 6-2 split. We'll look at the squad now. Um, so I think it'll be a much closer game than what we saw South Africa versus England. We have the teams now on the screen, Ethan. Talk us through the Scottish selection.
So for the Scottish selection is not the one I thought it would be. I thought it'd be a bit more similar last week, where I mean, granted, Elliot Miller-Mills is unfortunately injured. That he got injured about 5 minutes into that game against Argentina, where he won a great scrum penalty, and then that was his time up. So we've got Edinburgh faithfuls, Schumann and Ian Ashman, and then we've got Xander Fagerson for your front row, which I thought if Darcy Ray was fit, he would be starting for an all Edinburgh front row and then a Glasgow front row when they come off the bench. Then you got Gregor Brown, who many URC fans may recognise as a sort of hybrid lock flanker. Typically, he might play six, but he can fit in at both. And then you've got Scott Cummings, who once again keeps his jersey from last week. Then the Glasgow back row of not Scott Cummings, we just mentioned him, Matt Fagerson, Rory Darge, and Jack Dempsey. And then finally, when we look at the Scottish backs, we've got Ben White, who is currently playing for Toulon in the top 14, but also was a British and Irish Lion. And then everyone knows Finn Russell. And then a very Glasgow-esque backline with Jamie Dobie, who normally plays scrum half, but again, he can alternate onto the wing. Sione Tuipulotu, who's captaining the side. Rory Hutchison, who just won the English Prem with Northampton Saints, and is sort of an underrated and underappreciated player in the Scotland setup that he really should have had a lot more caps than he's had. Glasgow captain Kyle Steyn on the wing, who was weirdly a vice captain last week, but I don't know if they've just decided to omit the VC from him this week. And then finally, Glasgow fullback and wing, Kyle Rowe at 15. Then a fairly Glasgow bench with Gregor Hiddleston, Rory Sutherland, and then Will Hurd, who again I believe plays for. Oh gosh, we just heard play for. I believe he plays for Northampton. I can't actually remember off the top of my head because I always get him and Alec Hepburn mixed up. Josh Bayliss, who plays with Finn Russell at Bath, Magnus Bradbury, the Edinburgh captain from the season that's just ended in the URC, Tom Jordan, who was former Glasgow URC winner, and then Stafford McDowell, who again is a Glasgow regular and occasional Scotland substitute at 13 for Hugh Jones. So it's a very unchanged Scotland, though it's more the bits that have changed or the bits that have surprised me because I thought they would try to keep it the same. The biggest thing here for me is the lack of a scrum half on a bench that Scotland quite likes. Like Townsend's been experimenting with Glasgow's two scrum half system at the moment, but there's no George Horn, which will be puzzling to see how that goes. It's sure Jamie Dobie's on the wing, but George Horn loves tearing it up against tired opposition. Yeah, but it's a weird one as well because you've got Josh Bayliss, who, even though he's a flanker, he can also play at wing as he does for Bath because he is very pacey. And then you've got Stafford McDowell, who's a centre, but occasionally has filled in at flanker for Glasgow. So we might see a 7-1 split for Glasgow, depending on the circumstances, or it might actually be a 5-3, depending where Josh Bayliss ends up.
Interesting.
So
From a South
yeah.
African perspective, Ethan, we've got a couple of questions for you.
Mhm.
Is because obviously we saw Hugh Jones sort of emerge through Western Province and the Stormers, so there's questions about
Yep.
him. And then the other question would be, so the Hugh Jones question is like, is he not in the broader squad at all?
So he's not in the broader squad at all because he's currently injured. I think he has enough credit in the bank at the moment that if he were fit, he probably would get in. He may still be like a Blair Kinghorn situation that, they may have decided to give him the summer off anyway to go and settle in to his new home in Toulon. Um, but I think he's still got credit, but he's not been at his best since I believe it was the Six Nations. He had a really good game when he came back against, I believe it was Clermont we played in the Champions Cup. And then he's kind of, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a tiredness thing or a mentality thing that I have no idea when his new contract was signed, whether it's just, like, oh, this is it with Glasgow and that just putting some stress on him. But I think he should be able to get back into form. I think he just needs a bit of a rest because it's been a long year for him. Um,
And Duan,
but
is he been
yeah.
dropped outright?
So for Duhan as well, again, he's not been at his best since it's it's a hard one because he's not been at his best for a while for both Scotland and Edinburgh. But I mean, for those who are regular listeners to the Global Gainline, we know Edinburgh is not functioning at the moment. And I feel that's kind of part of the problem is that Edinburgh's not helping boost his confidence. So then that kind of comes into it at a national level. I mean, granted, he was never Mr. Edinburgh in a good way. You know, some players are like that. Some players um, are either horrible at club level but are just fantastic at national level, or they just struggle to click in between the international matches. And that for him, again, I don't know if it's a fatigue thing, a mentality thing. I think what's best for him is at the moment, Edinburgh's going to get new coaches in. That might help him. That might help him find into the form. I think he might need to adapt slightly to the new world that wingers are in. That unfortunately for people like Duhan, you know, the big bulky wingers, that it's not really in the mode at the moment. You know, it's not the fashion. That instead players like Kyle Stain are flourishing with the new laws regarding the high ball and the aerial game. Whereas I don't think I've really seen Duhan jump. He
Yeah, it's
probably
very
can.
interesting that you don't have Duan in this team. You don't have uh um Hugh Jones,
Yeah.
um Darcy. What's the other wing again?
Darcy Graham. So I would have
Darcy Gray.
expected him to possibly come in
Yeah,
or at least be on the
and
bench. But yeah,
on top of it, like Josh Mackay is going to be eligible pretty soon.
yeah,
So backline wise, especially back three, you're pretty well stocked if there's like an injury crisis or like random stuff happens and stuff like that. So that's encouraging from a Scottish perspective. From a South African perspective, somewhat shithousery picking Bourne Venter because it was so close, so
he
close
was.
to capping him. So Bourne Venter starts at lucid prop. Oxen Shares injured, so we don't know if that was enforced rotation or not. Johan Grobler of the Bulls starting at number two. Wilco Low of the Bulls, but soon to be back at the Stormers, starting at tight head prop. Kobus Visser, Jasper Visser's younger brother, much bigger, yeah, taller younger brother, starting at forelock with his Bulls partner, but soon to be off to Japan, or Nokia at his preferred position at five. Paul de Villiers, who's former baby buck as well, doing yeoman work at more of a classic fetcher type open side flank. Peter Steph two-time World Player of the Year at blindside flank. Evan Roos, everyone says Rassi doesn't like him. I still haven't seen any actual proof to that extent, and I don't like conjecture and stuff like that. People like to sort of like imagine things like they're AI or something. Emrys Papier getting his first cap in years was quite picked quite often by the previous Springbok administration. Heideke Meyer and Alistair Coetzee did play one game under Rassie when Rassie did start out, and then sort of wasn't picked. But it's a crowded position at scrum half. Teaming up with his club teammate Andre Pollard. Caden Moody shifts to wing. Damien Willemse in my preferred position at 12. Jesse Creel outside center. Um, Edwin van der Merwe, Sharks player on the other wing, and then Apelele Fasi also headed off to Japan for a sabbatical, another Sharks player. On the bench, we've got utility forward Jan Hendrik Wessels um, at 16 position, which is generally reserve hooker, but anything's possible because Jan Hendrik Wessels can also play loose-head prop. Speaking of loose-head prop, Nkunu Nchunu, he's revived his career very much so. Like he found his form at the Stormers, and we're really happy for him. Zach Porthen, former Baby Buck captain at reserve tight head prop. Ben Jason Dixon covering lock, or is he? Because Vincent Chituka often covers lock for the Sharks. I think that should be swapped around, but there could be some sort of like misdirection there in terms of selection. Ulrich Low, whose nickname is the Sheriff, very good at I prefer him at number 8. Good player, struggled with injuries of late. Maybe lost a bit of speed, but still very, very good. Um, Interesting, Cameron Hanekom fell out entirely. Grant Williams on the bench after starting last week at scrum half, and then Corn Horn, who can cover 15 and 10 and wing if you need him to, as utility back at number 23. So I'm pleased with the rotation. We've spoken lots on the rewind how I don't like the fact that Andy Farrell doesn't rotate. I think the South African system because the players keep talking about the systems the whole time, it allows for a degree of more rotation. And if you're winning, to be fair, you are able to do these types of things. So the South Africa playing a few more wins. I'm pleased. I wanted to see a shake-up, and I'm super interested to see what team Rassie actually picks next week against Cymru/Wales as well. And then I think there's a break before the Argentina game. So from your perspective, Ethan, how do you view this Springbok selection?
I think it's really interesting because when I first saw this team, the bulk of this team were all Bulls players, which I did wonder because obviously the Bulls were in the final a few weeks ago against Leinster, and then part of me wondered whether they were always going to be playing against Scotland, given the familiar. I mean, not just the Bulls players here. You know, you got Bowen Fenter, who played with Edinburgh, and as you mentioned, he was so close to playing for us. But I'm happy he finally got the recognition he deserves and was able to be picked by South Africa. Um, Alongside, you know, you've got Edville van der Merwe, Tsushuka, and Kewan Horn. That, you know, there's a whole wide range of players. You've got Stormers, you've got Sharks, you've got Lions. You got Stormers in there. So it's a really URC heavy team. And I do wonder if that is not just a rotation side of it, but if it is also, as you mentioned, it is a familiarity with the bulk of the Scotland team being Edinburgh and Glasgow players, that there is that familiarity between the two. Because when I first saw the bulk of the Bulls, I was somewhat kind of on one side thinking, oh, okay, you know, we know these guys. This should be a bit easier rather than, you know, having a team of effectively more Japanese based and more English based South African players that, you know, there might not be as much competition between them since we wouldn't regularly play them. But then on the other hand, um, a team coached by Razi is a significantly different team than one coached by, for example, oh gosh, is it? I just completely lost it. Forgot the the Bulls coach because I was about to say Jake White, but it's no longer Jake White. It's
Yeah, it's
because he's got
Johan
the same
Ackerman.
Ackerman. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was going to
I
say he's
can't
got the
blame
same
you
name
because
as
they changed them. Yeah.
that. That, you know, we know the Bulls again have had their
Mm.
performance issues this year. That we frankly spoke about it quite a lot on the Global Gainline. That sometimes the Bulls were quite hot, sometimes they're quite cold, and that, you know, Pollard in particular, I think is a really good encapsulation of that. That Pollard, you know, when he had, was it like 12 games in a row or something for the Bulls, you know, he got there, you know, he was really good. But then in the semi-final against Glasgow, he missed so many of his penalties that it was uncharacteristic for him because, you know, he's the man of the golden boot. You'd want him to kick anything, and he just kept missing. And then, yeah, and then the Bulls were just deflated in the final against Leinster as well. But as I mentioned, you know, a bit of rest, that it was a busy season, and that ultimately, you know, you got the thrill of not only just playing at home, but, you know, playing for South Africa under Rousey. That might be enough to make them, you know, they might as well be completely different people at this point. That you just forget those Bulls players exist, and it's these guys now.
Interesting. So we'll keep the predictions until the end of the show. So before we move on to topic number 3, I'm just going to give another shout out to our presenting sponsor on these preview pods is Culture Lab Kombucha. And I see they've updated their website, Ethan.
Ooh.
Um, it's they used to only have the first, so these are the 4 initial flavors they had. This is the one I enjoy most. I think it's because I tried lemongrass the first time myself. And then now you can also order the 2 new more exotic flavors. So it's wild Dagga ginger. Again, Dagga is just a colloquial term here for cannabis, although there is no cannabis and there's no THC in this, to the best of my knowledge. I have had one, though. This is also a very refreshing one. Lemongrass, Buku rooibos, again, sort of like a bushy tree, sort of small leaf bush that you find in the Karoo, confetti boss, and then sort of a more mushroom focused one in lion's mane. I forget they did send me voice notes of how to pronounce that, but I
Uh,
forget. But cordyceps
Cordyceps.
is
Yeah.
definitely a thing, but the middle name I don't know, I think. And then this one's got a very unique name. It's a Shushandra Amla elderberry. Kamu Kamu. Jason, I know you're watching, Jason from Culture Labs. I hope I did your product proud by pronouncing that correctly. And then obviously, as I said, confetti boss, sometimes known as pronounced like that, is a plant from the Western Cape and everything. This is obviously kombucha, not to be confused with kefir, which is more of it's also a fermented drink, but it's more of a uh, sort of dairy-based one, which I also really enjoy. Like, um, yeah, then kombucha is a fermented, slightly fizzy, tangy beverage made from sweetened black or green tea. So yeah, very nice. Uh, well, oh, let me put my video back on. Shame on me, Ethan. Um,
Yeah.
both our teams are in the Junior Rugby World Cup as well.
Yeah.
And you've got some South Africans in your team. We don't have any Scottish players in our team. Doesn't seem fair. We don't even have players with like some Welsh ancestry, but we might find that out a bit later. But speaking of which, you've got that thick scrum half in your broader squad, as you said in the pre-pod discussion. Of the three games you
Yeah.
played, you think he played two. Obviously, we're all very busy. All like cards on the table. I've not watched any of the Baby Bok games in the group stage live because they're on sort of like weekdays starting at 4 and one is still either at the office or commuting. Um but I have kept track of like the results. I've checked the teams obviously, and I've watched the games after the fact. And I'm really looking forward to South Africa versus England on Monday. In South African time, I think it's around 7 o'clock. I'll double check now while we're offline. In fact, while you're talking, I'll actually do that. And an important thing to remind the audience is that within the youth system of these tournaments, there's only after the group stage, it goes straight to a semi-final format. So you might think, oh, teams that didn't make the semi-final, the top four, the teams who did make the semi-final are South Africa, France, England, and Ireland. I think so. Yeah. I think Ireland made it.
Uh,
I'll double
uh,
check.
New Zealand top tower
Oh,
group.
sorry, my bad. So Ireland didn't make it. No wonder. No wonder.
I don't think so,
Uh,
no.
no wonder. Kalen seems so down these days. Although credit to Kalen, they did a Junior Rugby World Cup preview specifically for Ireland, and it got incredible views. It was all Josh Neal's cousins and family from South Africa watching that. Oh, they stole another one. So yeah. How are things? So you still play is what I wanted to before I pass over to Ethan is that even if you don't make the semifinal, he still continues to play, and that's something I was incredibly able to enjoy when I watched this tournament live in 2012. Weirdly, in 2023, it was back in South Africa, but I had so much on my plate, and where my work was based on where the games were. It was just too much. So I couldn't go watch any games live, even though it was like an Athlone Stadium. But I sometimes you have to listen to your body and not like kill yourself. So Scotland is still playing in the tournament.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on the first three games?
I think they were quite interesting because this, on paper, that pool looked quite hard. That, you had New Zealand, who, has always been a formidable force. They actually stole one of our players, funnily enough, to my understanding. That we had a player, I can't remember what he's called, but I'm sure he went to, there's two schools, it's either Strathallan or Lathallan. And because they posted on Facebook, oh, congratulations to them getting capped by New Zealand. It's like, they stole them, but nah, it's okay. You win some, you lose some. He might come back to us. You never know. But
Yeah.
so we had New Zealand, we had Italy, who again in the Six Nations this year in the under 20s, we did beat Italy, but Italy have always been in the last few years been a solid under 20s team. That many of them have filtered through to the senior teams to devastating effect. So they haven't been as good. They're still solid. And then we've got Japan, that with Japan, you never know. That they are a tier one nation. They do have that ability to turn up on anyone. So we played Italy. The game against Italy was just mental. Jake DL is just fantastic. He's so talented. He's only 17 and he's playing in the under 20s. Yeah, it's just crazy. You wouldn't expect it from how confident he plays. Then, speaking of Matthew Fick, that I felt like he's been quite good so far. It showed a lot to me that I believe the first game he was eligible to play for, which I think was a warm-up game, he started, and then he started in this tournament. I think he started two of the three games, and then he was on the bench for, I think his name's Asa. I can't really remember him. He's another sort of Scots qualified, but I think he grew up in England, I believe. But no, Matthew Fix, he's had a phenomenal tournament so far. Hopefully, we see him more for Edinburgh in the next season. And then against New Zealand, probably the best performance Scotland's had this year, or at least even this batch of under 20s, as they had a horrid Six Nations, whether getting absolutely curb stomped by England or Ireland or France, or choking a game against Wales, sort of thing, I believe. That to lose by, I believe, 9 or so points against New Zealand, especially given, for example, how young some of those players are and how recently they come into the fold, is phenomenal. And now they've got Argentina next, who I think in the sort of like not tier two, but the second ranked of each of the
Mhm.
pools. I think they came second overall because they had like 87 in their points difference. But I think a lot of that came from Uruguay, who I thought was quite good at under 20s level. But Uruguay just got completely smashed from what I saw. So it's going to be a tough one, but we know Argentina's a good team. Hopefully the under 20s can learn a lot from their senior counterparts and just get through it. Because I think if we win the fifth to ninth, isn't it? Yeah, it must
Mhm.
be if there's
Yeah.
four of them. I think that's the best, or that equals the best they've done in the tournament, which again is phenomenal because Scotland's under 20 system, for those who don't know, we don't really have as much of a system. That part of, the very controversial David Nucifora reforms has been trying to fix stuff like that. That, in South Africa, you've got like all the school system, and that's like an integral part. To my understanding, I might be spouting complete nonsense.
No, this is.
um, yeah, that you've got school systems that's incredibly competitive. Similarly, in Ireland, their school system is very competitive. In Scotland, we have some schools that you've got like Merchiston and Watsonians and stuff that are kind of like private school historical rugby clubs kind of mixed together. It is opening up, but also there's been a lot of focus in more Glasgow Warriors and Edinburgh's academy system playing more of a role. So, for example, Ollie Blythe Lafferty, who's the under 20s, I think he's the under 20s captain at the moment. It does fluctuate that he's a prop for Edinburgh. He's been phenomenal, and that you can see the impact of playing professional games has had on his development, that he looks so mature and so composed. And hopefully that is a sign of more things to come for Scotland under 20s, that more of them get the opportunity to play more at club level. And that trickles down, but also flows upwards when they actually stand up and are ready to play full time.
Awesome. So yeah, you're taking on Argentina next. Interesting sort of permutations from a South
Yeah.
African perspective. Oh, yeah, by the way, you have a 17-year-old in your team. In South
Yeah.
African systems, we wouldn't actually pick him. We'd make him play SA schools because that's sort of
Mhm.
the structure. But you're
Younger.
right.
Yeah.
The South African school system, schools rugby is so competitive. There's sort of like I'm not that uh involved in that because I only have so much time and that type of thing. But like there's like this like massive speculation that some of the players are on steroids, and one of our key players of the Sharks just tested positive. So we'll see what happened with the B sample with Kai Pratt, and all the comments when the Kai Pratt thing was announced was like, you're not doing anything to dissuade people of their assumptions of you. That having been said, I did see Kai Pratt live at uh was it why? Yeah, Rondebosch Boys High. Yeah, ginormous person, by the way. Biggest guy in the match 23 for South Africa. But incredibly nice to all the kids. Like after the game there was like very poor well, it was very open security in that game. So the kids just ran onto the field and you could interact with them. And so all the adults were like going up to the players and saying, "Hey, good game," maybe asking one or two questions, that type of thing. Um, but the kids were just like swarming these players, saying like, "Can I have your socks? Can I have your shoes? Can I have your pants?" Whatever. And then some of the players actually obliged, because you'll stand there and then the kids will be like, "Can I have your pants?" And the kids, and then the like ginormous rugby player will be like, "Yeah, okay." And then the kid like runs off and goes, "I got his pants." That type of thing. So like it's sort of momentous for them. But yeah, we've done well in the group stage. We brushed aside Uruguay. We had a more competitive, actually, our most competitive game was probably both Georgia and Wales was competitive, and now we take on England in the semi-final on I did have it here. I want to go. It's 6:30 South African time, so which is cool because Bit of an Animal is recording much later that evening, so tune in for that on Monday when we'll also review not just the Springbok game, that the senior Springbok, but also the junior Springbok game in the semi-final against England. Quick side note, quick sort of, I know this is a rugby podcast, Ethan, but in the broader rap Global Gainlines extended universe, cinematic universe, as I like to say, um, and I wonder who is who and that type of thing. I'm definitely Wolverine if it's Marvel, but anyway, um, um, both of our teams. None of our colleagues, yeah, because we don't have English colleagues full time yet, but none of our colleagues were in the World Cup. It was just myself and
Yeah.
you. And then, as I said in the pre-pod discussion the other day, I after Bafana, the South African national team lost their first game to Mexico, deservedly to one of the hosts at the Azteca at altitude. Um, I thought like, oh, we're probably not going to make it out the group. And if we do make it out of the group, we probably maybe make it one of the lucky three teams. So there's a chance I might just have to jump ship to Ethan's team, Scotland, because you guys won your first game, but then somehow
Well,
we made it out the group
yeah.
and you guys didn't. So yeah, of the players in the Scottish team that I know, it's obviously Scott McTominay. I didn't look at if he was playing or not, and then obviously Darren Fletcher's one kid, because Darren Fletcher has twins, but for some reason one of them picked too much to use annoyance. One of them
Yeah.
picked England and the other one picked Scotland. So how did this World Cup go for you?
It was pretty shit, to be honest. So we had a very horrible group in that I don't know how we ended up with this group because we topped our qualifying group. So I was hoping for something a bit more lenient. That we had Morocco, who were deservedly quarterfinalists in 2023. Is that right? Sorry, not 2023, 2022. That I'm sure they were quarterfinalists. And again,
Yeah.
a very solid team. Controversially, they were the runners up in AFCON. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I still don't know the conclusion to that.
yeah,
Did they win or didn't they win? I don't know. Anyway,
yeah.
I
And
think they just need to
then
share the trophy.
yeah, they need to share the trophy. And then we had Haiti or Haiti, who again, given all the circumstances that's going on with Haiti, have done really well to not only get that far, but I think they were really dominant, I'm sure, in their qualifiers as well. That, but then also we had Brazil, who may not be the sharpest Brazil that's been around for a while, but it's still a very solid team. And whilst we had a very touch and go game against Haiti, we won it. There was a lot of optimism there. Then somewhat controversial loss to Morocco, that there were some very, very dubious refereeing decisions that sadly were not the most dubious refereeing decisions in the whole tournament. And then all we had to do was not lose by 1 point, 1 goal against Brazil, and Brazil scored a hat trick. And that reduced our qualifying chances from like 82% to like zero point 0.4 or something like that. It wasn't impossible. But then all the results we needed, like Germany beating somebody by a certain margin, stuff like that. Funnily enough, all the really, really ones that you'd expect to happen did not happen at all. Um, and it's led to Steve Clark resigning after they stupidly decided to give him a contract extension of 4 years after before the tournament even started. But yeah, it was good to be back in the World Cup. Just a shame it kind of was a bit of a whimper on how we went out.
Who were the players in the team? Andy Robertson, was he in the mix?
He was there. You
Mm.
had Shay Adams.
Kieran Tierney?
Oh, Tierney. I always get Kieran Tierney and Billy Gilmore mixed up. Billy Gilmore was injured. They're
Mm.
so similar. I don't know why I keep getting them mixed up. I
But,
don't know what it is.
Billy Gilmore's the midfielder, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, but
and
he
then
oh he plays for Napoli in France. I know that much. Yeah.
uh, and then obviously Scott McTominay was a bigger one. I'm pretty sure. Oh gosh, Lyndon Dykes. I'm pretty sure plays because there's Marshall Sykes who plays
Mm,
rugby for Edinburgh, and then there's
mm,
Lyndon Dykes who plays football. And it's just, when the two names are so similar and you're like, but they look completely different when you look at them because Lyndon Dykes is just covered in tattoos. Then
mm.
you've got, I'm pretty sure Carl McGregor was playing.
Yeah, I
I'm,
think he was.
I think so.
Mm,
Um, and then
mm.
was it
A different
Hickey?
a different type of McGregor's gonna get his ass beat this weekend. That's another
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate you, Connor. You're
Yeah.
such a wanker. Anyway, none of the Irish correspondents like you either, Connor.
Yeah.
From a South from a South African perspective, losing the first game, interestingly enough, David, when we did the crossover pod of the Interpro show before the URC rewind, actually reminded me that Ireland were about to qualify and they just had to defeat Churcher. So that means, and we got Churcher in the group. So that means that if, well, we don't know how the draw might have turned out if Ireland, but there was a chance that Ireland, I think it was actually, I think it was pre-selected that whoever qualifies here gets into this group.
Mm.
So it would have been another bit of an Interpro show crossover between bit of an animal and Interpro show. If Ireland had met South Africa in the football, and so like in the rugby, because I think they were like kind of very similar in the football and stuff. So we lost to Mexico, then we got a sort of battling draw against Czechia in the second game, and then we got a really good results against South Korea, which like people were sharing memes
Yep.
about how we're going to get destroyed because the South Koreans were doing synchronized swimming slash training, but that wasn't even the South Korean team, that was the under 20 team, and everyone's like, Look at our players that are like on the stationary bike on their phones, and the South Korean players are like moving iron, like it's like at the German shit. So no one gave us a chance, and then we got out the group not as like a lucky third place, but like straight second place, which is incredible. Unfortunately, that's where our tournament ended in the next round. We were soundly defeated, but I think there's a lot that can be done in terms of South African football to improve South African football. I won't get into it as much now. I still have strong feelings that our local league sort of encourages players more to just plateau.
Mm.
Whereas we need to develop a system where the local league encourages players to go on to, like the Ivory Coast players, they go to Belgium and then they go to Spain and then eventually they make it to England, that type of thing. Whereas like our local league is so like it pays reasonably well, but then it's like people lose motivation and they just don't push on. But anyway, we're still a rugby podcast, so we're gonna do some quick fire predictions with Ethan because we did do early predictions on Sunday, but we didn't have the match 23s. So quickly, Ethan, New Zealand versus Italy now that you know the match 23s.
Oh, still New Zealand.
All right.
Still New Zealand.
Australia, France.
Ooh, I feel weirdly France is experimenting. I'm sure they put Jalibert to fullback, which I
Mm.
don't know if he can play fullback.
Intermac is
My
a fly off. Wow.
yeah, I know he's not injured. Funny some Toulouse players can make it into the to the Southern Hemisphere and others don't, but that's a whole other topic. And it's good. And then my heart says Australia because I think Australia could pull it off, but I think brains France. I'm gonna
All
go
right.
France.
Japan Island.
Well, the weird thing about that is it's not actually being played in Japan. It's really an Irish home game because so
Mm,
many Irish people have moved to Australia
mm,
that it's I think it'd probably be an Ireland win anyway if it was in Japan. I don't think Eddie can pull a fast one
mm,
on this Ireland team at the moment. Even though it's a lot of younger players, ironically, a lot of Ireland's better players are the younger ones at the moment.
mm. Fiji at the Hill Dickinson in Merseyside versus a beautiful part of Fiji, by the way,
Yes.
versus the shell of England.
I think Fiji can do it because Fiji have beaten England before. I don't think last year, I think it was 2 years, which was incredibly funny. That yeah, it must have been 2 years ago because it was at the South Africa game that we were all watching it at Murrayfield and we were all cheering for Fiji. I think Fiji can do it because they've been in the UK for the whole. They're there for the whole summer. That they've been there since Wales, whereas England's been traveling.
Mm,
Unless they're doing it that the England squad that they took to South Africa, they're not there, and rather they kept the ones they wanted to there in England. But I don't think they would do that because you
yeah,
never know if injury cover at the moment. So I'm going to go Fiji.
yeah. Argentina, Wales, in
I
Argentina.
I think Argentina could still. I'm still leaning towards Argentina. And I think again travel factor. I think just on paper, Argentina is a better team. That sure Wales is improving. That under Tandy they had got their first Six Nations win. They did beat Japan in the autumn last year, which did technically end that spell. But it is hard to measure at the moment because they almost beat Ireland away, but then they lose to. I'm trying to think who did they lose to? I can't really remember their Six Nations. They came close
S-
to us. They almost beat. Well, they beat Italy, so
mm,
I'll give them that. But they're two games, which granted it was at the start of Six Nations against England and France. They got pumped.
Yeah,
So it's just we'll have to see more of Wales at the moment for a better. But I'm going to go Argentina.
yeah. I think Argentina will bounce back, especially since Wales have to fly all the way that side. So before we get to the pièce de résistance, the thing everyone is waiting for, just a quick reminder, thank you to Culture Lab Kombucha. Check them out on Instagram. They've got a very vibrant um social media presence. As well as for people such as myself and Ethan who frequent the gym quite often. It's great for pre-workout and great for post-workout. It's also for, like if you need to concentrate, it helps with like cognitivity. I tend not to drink it quite late at night because I want to get a good night's sleep, because it does sort of like pep you up and that type of thing. But yeah, thanks again to Jason, Amy, Jacques, everyone at Culture Lab Kombucha, manufactured in sunny Muizenberg. That's probably why it tastes so good. Um, Ethan, the moment has arrived. We've
Yeah.
got the match 23s. We've had time to mull this over. Score prediction for Scotland, South Africa.
I'm still leaning towards anywhere in the margin of 14 to 17 points to South Africa. That unless we manage to pull what Australia did last year, which I have seen some people talk about, and that they are worried in case it is a repeat of that. I think at the moment the safe bet is because it has always been within about two tries and a bit over the last several games between us, which I think is a fair reflection really between the power standings that Scotland aren't quite close enough to try and break that 14 a point and under threshold. Um, so I think it'll probably, as much as I want to win, I think it will unfortunately be about 14, 17 points.
Yeah, I think South Africa will win, but because of and I'm a big advocate for rotation, but because of the significant rotation and it being so early in the season, South Africa does have a degree of cohesion more than other teams when they rotate this much. But yeah, and yes, there's some club sort of combos there as well, like scrum off, fly off, that type of thing. I think it will rather be closer. It'd be South Africa by 3 or 4, somewhere in that range. But it's going to be a great game. I hope it's selling out at Loftus. Weather seems to be decent. Although I checked the weather for Cape Town because I live in Cape Town. I need to check the weather for Pretoria. And that brings us to the end of the show. I'd like to thank Ethan, producer Lee, you for making the thumbnails and that type of thing. If you have any issues with the thumbnails, you guys can message you. Links for the sponsors are in the description. And until next week, in Rasi, we trust.